Wilma coverage now continues on a special edition of Your Weather Today.
Good morning from Key West, where Wilma has battered the Florida Keys so far. The worst here in the Keys, at least here in Key West, will be the flooding and the surge. We'll talk to the police chief and get an idea of what he's seen overnight here in Key West.
And here in Naples, Florida, waking up to a landfalling Wilma Category 3 storm, heavy rain, violent winds right now, debris in the streets, surge is a problem off Naples Bay. I'm Mike Bettis. I have a live report straight ahead.
Incredible pictures show the ferocity of Hurricane Wilma even before making landfall. Check out the driving wind and rain as they just punish a Naples, Florida pier. It's an amazing display of Mother Nature's power and force.
The wind just blasted through trees and even grass. It also whipped around buildings and really tossed around boats in the water.
Welcome back to Hurricane Central. Storm alert coverage continues on Hurricane Wilma, officially making landfall at 6:30 this morning over Cape Romano, Florida.
And we're going to show you some of the conditions out there this morning. It is pretty rough in some areas. This is a look at the situation on Marco Island. This is just south of Naples. This video was shot just before landfall this morning. Hurricane Wilma's storm surge and punishing winds broke up part of the pier. It is now just bobbing, barely hanging on. Streets are also dark with damaged street lights and also power outages.
We have alert coverage all over the southern Florida peninsula as you take a look here at the landfall location, 6:30 this morning, Cape Romano, Florida. That's about 20 miles to the west of Everglades City. Winds 120 miles per hour, and it is still moving northeast at a good clip, about 20 miles per hour.
And again, it is digging into southwest Florida here after making landfall in Cape Romano. And again, that's just south of Marco Island. Wilma was a major hurricane at landfall, packing winds of 125 miles per hour. That's a Cat 3. It is now moving off quickly to the northeast.
Indeed it will. It could be a factor in the northeast part of the country, too. We'll have all the details on that. But again, we have our team of experienced meteorologists here in the studio and live on the front lines. Our crews are scattered all along the coast, spread out this morning. Mike Seidel in Key West, Mike Bettis in Naples.
And also Jim Cantores in Key Largo. Mike, we're going to start with you on some of the conditions that you're finding this morning. What's it like out there?
Well, it's a very windy morning. We are anxiously awaiting first light here in Key West. Our peak gust clock just before 3 a.m. Eastern was about 83 miles an hour, but then the Weather Service lost communication with the anemometer, which measures the wind speed at the airport, so we won't know for a while what our peak gust was. But with all the reports coming in from the lower Keys up above 90, even 100 miles an hour, we're safe to say that our gusts were in that range. Looking down Duval Street, the main street, which would be filled normally with people over the weekend and this week because of Fantasy Fest, just the media and all the residents who are in, hopefully at home, because there is a curfew until 7 a.m. But you can see debris on the street. We don't see major structural damage. Everything looks to be in pretty good shape structurally, but that's not the main issue on the island. Let's bring in our Chief of Police, Bill Maunin. And Chief, you've been up, I'm assuming, all night and driving around some of the island. And I mentioned structural damage, at least early on, as it looks serious, but the real threat right now is the continued surge.
That's correct. We've had surge on the south side of the island, and that surge has been pretty significant. We have some flooding into homes on the south side of the island, and we're looking for further surge on the north side of the island. So there's more to come.
We talk the south side. We're talking over the Atlantic side, around Atlantic Boulevard, around the southernmost point.
That's correct. We're looking at the Atlantic side. That's correct.
And we had a surge report earlier of about 3.5 feet, and you're saying a lot of these homes are at basically zero elevation, so the water is probably in the first floor.
Yes, I would say that we're probably looking at about 2 to 3 feet in most of the streets. That's what we saw about 4 a.m.
Well, we are going to get the winds to shift around and blow some of that water out later on this morning. In the meantime, once we get the light, the first light, what will the police department in the city be doing? First thing to do is Wilma still brings the wind in here.
Yeah, what we're going to do is we'll have our strike teams out. Our strike force will be going out. We'll be looking at the damage that has been done by the storm, whether it be flooding or structural damage, and we'll be doing an assessment, and then we'll be calling in the resources that are necessary to help the local residents.
Yeah, the power crews have already staged here, correct?
That's correct. They have staged, and as soon as the hospital's up and running and those things that are needed for them to get out and do their work, then I'm sure they'll go out and do what's necessary.
Now, do you expect to get the hospital open later today? With the fact that the storm is pulling out very quickly, is that a power issue, or do they have generators over there?
Well, you know, it's gonna come down to the hospital, how long it takes for them to get up. I really can't speak for them in terms of, you know, what they need to do, but I'm sure they'll get that hospital up and running as fast as they can.
And what will you be doing beyond today and tomorrow in the next couple of days?
Well, like I said earlier, we're going to be doing a lot of search and recovery sort of missions, and going out and doing damage assessment. And that's what we will be busy with for the next 24 to 48 hours.
And one last question as far as the emergency response overnight. I know you had limited response capabilities. You had some ambulances. We know the fire department brought one lady over here to the hotel, an employee of the hotel whose tree fell in her house. Can you give us an idea of what kind of response you had on the 911 lines overnight?
Fortunately, we did not have any incidents in which we had to call upon extensive medical care. We had no situations like that. We had a number of people who called in and said that they were really concerned, they were frightened. We tried to console them as much as we could. So those were basically the calls we had all night.
Okay, Chief Bill Mauldin, thanks. Okay. Good luck with the assessment.
Thank you.
Anxiously awaiting sunlight here in the Key West area. As he mentioned, the real story, we think at this point, is going to be the surge and the flooding on the bay side, on the Florida Bay side, and also on the Atlantic side. The surge report earlier was anywhere from 3 to 4 feet. Now, it's nothing like they saw with Katrina with a 25 to 30-foot surge, but remember, these homes are right down flat, and you got a foot of water in your home. You've got the mold, the mildew problem, same kind of issues we've seen with those homes, especially around the city of New Orleans. Now let's go up to just near ground zero, just north of where the eye came in at 6:30. Mike Bettis is up there in the Naples area. Mike, you're out there in the yachts, out there in the boat, and the docks there. What about surge issues in your area? Have you seen the water come up because of the fact that you were on the other side of the storm?
We're talking about getting surge from the bay side. That's what we're seeing here as well. We've generally had an offshore wind. No concern whatsoever for surge off the Gulf, but Naples, the city of Naples, sits in between the Gulf of Mexico and Naples Bay. We've actually had some water rise on Naples Bay, and some of those waves crashing over some of the break walls and some of the parking lots and sidewalks. What that means is we're now starting to see some flooding in a few areas. So we've seen in some of the parking lots knee-deep water, and that water needs some place to go. And where does it go? It goes right into the streets. And so many of the areas that are low-lying here in Naples are going to be underwater. We're already seeing that here in the pre-dawn hours. So multiple facets to this storm right now. We've been able to get out there this morning and kind of take a look at what's been going on. Wind damage for sure. We've had some trees that have been down, the palm trees that line some of the shopping areas. We've also had some lights that have been down, but flooding has been a problem for us, and a lot of spray coming over Naples Bay right now with the water level rise there and getting some surge at this point. So that at this point is going to want to be one of the primary concerns. Also keep in mind that over the past couple of hours it has rained very hard here in Naples, and so we've had quite a bit of rain in addition to the surge. And so there are going to be some locations very close to the Bay Area. So if you live in a home or an apartment very near the Bay, monitor those water levels. Keep in mind that it could be rising, and at times rising very rapidly here this morning. It's something definitely that we want to keep in mind as the sun rises and we get a little bit of daylight this morning. Obviously, we anticipate seeing more damage across the area. We've seen a lot of signs on hotels, on restaurants that have been damaged. So that is going to be, I think, very typical of the kind of damage that we see in this area. We're now starting to see our winds shift just a little bit. Primarily, they've been out of the east, but I've been watching the boat behind me, and it has a flag on it. And that flag is now starting to shift a little bit more toward the south, more of a south wind. So we're going to see them swirl a bit because we're basically on that dividing line between the eye wall and the eye. So we anticipate a bit of a swirl to that wind, and then eventually once the center of the storm passes by us, we anticipate more of a northerly and then a westerly component to the wind, and then that may bring in a slight storm surge off of the Gulf of Mexico, but at that point it'll be, we believe, a little bit weaker, and it's rapidly moving to the east, the entire storm itself, so hopefully we'll be able to minimize off the Gulf of Mexico. Conditions here, Heather and Marshall, in the pre-dawn hours as Wilma has made landfall. The biggest concern we believe right now in the Naples area is for flooding and some surge off of Naples Bay. Back to you in the Weather Channel studios.
All right, thanks. It's Mike Bettis from Naples, Florida.
And, you know, we want to show you some pictures from Pompano Beach, Florida. Hurricane Wilma's winds pulled at palm trees and whipped up sand from the beach. You can see it just shooting across the parking lot. The Category 3 storm made landfall at 6:30 Eastern Time this morning.
We've got you covered here at the Weather Channel with commercial-free the next couple of hours to keep you updated on this hurricane. Even Dr. Greg Forbes is here. He's going to have an update on severe weather for you. But right now, Dr. Steve Lyons.
And Steve, as we look at this system, who's going to get the worst of it next?
Okay.
Well, right now, it looks like the eye is going to come right over the north Miami, Palm Beach area, Fort Lauderdale area over the next hour or so, and that eye wall is going to cause some significant damage. National Weather Service has just reported a wind gust of 87 miles per hour in Miami. I live down there. I had one of those screens on my pool in the backyard. That's the type of wind in the gust, just 87 miles per hour, that can take one of those pool screens down. We're expecting the winds to be much stronger than that when the circulation gets closer. So Miami, Palm Beaches, Fort Lauderdale, the next few hours, look at the eye coming right toward you, and that's going to mean some very strong winds and some significant damage to those weaker type structures, and that includes those pool screens, and a lot of trees are going to go down, and of course the power is going to be out. In the meantime, over here in the Naples area, the wind is still offshore, so the surge has not been there except inside the bays and the estuaries. The surge has been down here in the Everglades, where pretty much no one lives, particularly Cape Sable, and of course down here in Key West we've had some significant surge as well. Once the system moves toward Miami, Fort Lauderdale, because the wind's going to be blowing offshore on the south side, and the north side is going to be a brief onshore blow, we don't expect a huge water rise there. It's primarily going to be a wind event in this area, and it's going to last probably only 3 to 4 hours, and it's going to happen probably while you can see it because the sun's going to be coming up here shortly. So power outages and the potential for some structure damage from falling trees and some structure damage from the wind directly from a Category 3 hurricane. And when we look at the radar here, you'll see something that's a little bit reassuring in just a second. But you can see right here the surge 12 to 15 feet in an area that's fairly uninhabited. Up farther to the north, not too bad because the wind has been primarily offshore. Down in the Keys, 5 to 8 feet. And offshore the Miami area, we don't expect too much of a water problem. It's primarily going to be a wind problem and not too much of a rain problem. Now let's look at the circulation here moving onshore. We don't expect it to deviate much at all from its current track, blowing right across the Florida Peninsula and then coming offshore with this big trough of low pressure. There's a cold front that's come all the way down, and it's parked just to the north of the circulation, and it's going to basically spin like a yo-yo right up that front acting like the yo-yo string and coming up toward the northeastern United States. We could see some problems up there over the next 36 hours as well. But by the time that happens, this will be an extratropical cyclone, but a very powerful one that could cause some strong winds there. So here's our projected path right over the Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Palm Beach area over the next couple of hours. Keep in mind that wind is always stronger in the higher elevation. So if you live in a high-rise and you don't have shutters on the windows and those windows aren't certified for high winds, you may need to move into an interior area away from those windows over the next few hours. Let's get back to the studio with Heather and Marshall now.
All right, thank you, Steve. And now we're going to go to goggle-clad Jim Cantori. He's in Key Largo.
He is and should be, too. He is north of Isla Mirada, which indicated a wind gust not a long time ago, about 108 miles per hour. So let's go to Jim Cantori now. He is in Key Largo, Florida. Jim, what's the situation there?
Well, Marshall, again, we probably have had gusts up around 100 miles an hour, but remember, I'm down near the water and through here, so we certainly haven't felt anything quite that strong, but it doesn't take much to hear the whistling of the wind. And you know, at night, what we've learned when we cover storms, is to not only listen for things, but also try and smell things. And I mean, you can smell when like trees are being blown over and leaves are coming off the trees, because there's a very distinct smell. It shows up, and it's very, very strong when with fresh leaves, wet leaves, and certainly trees that have been blown over. So we have, I would guess, some tree damage and some power lines down in places. As a matter of fact, power went out about an hour and a half ago. Transformers popping everywhere. At first, it wasn't too bad because they were coming back and the power was coming back. But after about half hour, 45 minutes of that, we've pretty much lost power as far as the eye can see. You can see here as we look at some of the pictures in and around the area. Again, remember, folks, we haven't even seen first light yet for the most part. You can see some of the palm trees swaying around from time to time with these wind gusts. Not surprising at all. Well, another thing I can hear too, Marshall and Heather, is just down from me, probably about 100 yards, there is a big metal building that houses boats, and I can hear some of that metal flapping a little bit, so perhaps some of that roofing has been loosened by this. But look at these beautiful boats behind me here. They have actually fared very, very well. They've been tied up for the last 3 days now, and you can see that, yeah, they're definitely bobbing around, but none of them are hitting the concrete here, or the dock, if you will, and that's the key. Fiberglass versus concrete. Guess who's going to win that battle? We've been watching a guy all morning. His name's Mike Sawyer. He's been out here taking care of his parents' boat, and all he's doing is just occasionally making some adjustments to the lines. So the spider web configuration that they did here the other day has basically worked very, very well. The most surprising thing to me, guys, as I look down here at the water here in this marina, is the fact that we have seen very little rise in that water at all. I mean, maybe a couple of inches, but there's been virtually no surge component whatsoever. Now, we're not out of the woods yet because there could be a little bayside surge. Winds will start coming around a little bit more westerly, and that could throw that water into the bay. So this would be the ocean side here. Bayside's going to be that way, and you can see that's the way the wind's blowing. It's coming right toward the bay now, so there could still be some bayside surge flooding before this thing is all said and done. Rainfall has been relatively light, maybe an inch if we're lucky, but it hasn't been so heavy and so fast and so persistent that it's been causing any flooding problems here. Now, with the wind blowing over the water, you know there's going to be overwash in some of these highways. Mile marker 74, we talked to the police chief about this yesterday. Mile marker 110, which is north of me. 74 is to the south of me, and we're at 100 here. That's where we may have some overwash issues. It happened during Dennis. It happened during Rita as well at the time of high tide. But we're lucking out here because we're actually at the time of low tide. Occasionally, Marshall and Heather, you will feel those winds pick up and gust enough to push me from time to time. But all in all, again, I think if you're a boat owner down and through here, I think you're going to be pretty pleased at what we're seeing down here before all is said and done. Amazing, guys. The sun. We may actually see it set tonight here in Key Largo. All right, let's go up the road a piece. Miami-Dade County. Jeff, things could go going downhill there. I heard of a wind gust near 90 miles an hour at Miami-Dade. Are you feeling that kind of wind right now?
Jim, we are in Miami Beach, probably the north end of Miami Beach, down here in between some of the hotels. We're by an older hotel that's kind of being renovated here, and I got to tell you, the roof completely is starting to come apart in this. I guess they're gonna be replacing it, but I want to show you some of what is coming off. Chunks, this is a smaller piece of kind of tar paper and wood underneath it, and it just flies off the, in fact, my producer Randy Flinders just had to duck because one went over his head. I mean, we just have a lot of debris flying around off of the top of this building here. Also, as soon as the sun comes up, and it's in the process of doing that now, there is a construction crane about 2 blocks down from me. I'm talking about one of those huge cranes that they use to construct high-rises. Right now, folks, as I'm looking at it, and believe me, we'll show you this, it is spinning like a top. It is going around in a circle. The long arm of it, as it comes around here, is just about hitting a building across the street. Oh, it's got to be within feet of that, and we'll show that to you coming up here. That can't be a good thing, but that thing is just spinning all the way around. Occasionally, we're getting the power to kind of flicker. Then it comes back, then it flickers. Power flashes all over the place. I mean, the sky just lit up green and blue at times here in just about every direction. There goes my light. Oh, the cameraman caught it for me. But I mean, it's really surreal here when you're in the city, and this is one of the few hurricanes that I've ever covered in a major metro area. I mean, there's just so much going on around here. The wind kind of swirling and down in these canyons of these buildings and everything, just blowing debris around, and you hear bangs and crashes and flashes. It's it's quite something. It's keeping us on our toes, that's for sure. It's actually kind of dangerous, so we'll keep our wits about you. We'll keep you updated here from Miami. The winds, I would estimate out in the open there is probably in the neighborhood of 60 or 70 miles an hour, definitely in gusts, maybe a little bit higher. Not a lot of rain yet. We haven't seen any flooding nor any reports of overwash, but boy, this wind's going to do some damage. Let's get back to you guys in the studio. We'll keep you updated.
All right, thanks. That was Jeff Morrow. You're tuned to Hurricane Central. We are commercial-free for the next 2 hours, keeping you updated on Hurricane Wilma. I'm Marshall Seats.
And I'm Heather Tash, and winds are increasing in Naples, Florida. Tropical force wind gusts are blowing rain. There is overwash flooding in some locations. Our live crews in Naples tell us they see flashes of green from time to time, power transformers being blown, and there are reports of power outages from the storm.
Well, Marathon, Florida is also taking a beating from Hurricane Wilma. WFR reporter Shamari Stone shows us what it looked like there earlier this morning.
Well, you can now see that the wind is definitely intensifying here in Marathon. You can see as my body just sways over this fence right here. And if you look, the storm surge is coming up. You see this water? Now, I'm not stepping down in the water. Why? Because if you look right here, there's a light, and I'm not going to risk my life. Oh, the light goes off, it's on. That's exactly what's happening because there's massive power outages. All the lights around US 1 at the tip of Marathon are out, and many people are using battery-operated flashlights. They're using candles, and they're also using glow sticks around their home. Officials recommend that you stay inside. They say it is incredibly unsafe out here. As you can see, this is part of my job, and this is what I'm supposed to do. I'm just letting you all know how powerful the storm is. Now you see that the waves, you see this? This should show you how intense it is. Let me turn the other side. You can see that with my weight, this fence is just, this fence here, railing, could fall, so I'm going to get off of it. Now, if you look right over there, those bushes are just, swaying back and forth as this gust from Hurricane Wilma just come through this way. Now, pretty soon, I'm sure the water will rise up this slope right here, and we will continue to bring you updates. We've got to move to safer ground. In Marathon, I'm Shamari Stone. Back to you.
Wind gust noted in Miami-Dade at about 82 miles per hour. It's Category 3 hurricane when it made landfall, and that means some damage.
Yeah, and still a Category 3 right now. You're going to find that this can lead to some structural damage to small buildings. Mobile homes can be destroyed under these conditions, and also large trees can be downed.
Now, we've been showing you what the storm has been doing from our live reports on the ground, but what about inside the storm?
The Weather Channel meteorologist Warren Madden is also a hurricane hunter. Lieutenant Colonel Madden arrived back from a flight into Hurricane Wilma around 6 this morning.
He did, and we spoke with him about some of his observations.
This storm has gone through many different phases. When it got organized, of course, it became that incredibly strong storm, the strongest in the Atlantic Basin. To give you a sense of comparison, you could fit almost the entire storm that it was when it was that very intense storm inside the eye that we flew in tonight. Over the last 24 hours, it has strengthened. The eye has not really shrunk a lot. In fact, it has stayed very wide, but the winds have picked up with it, and the central pressure has dropped down somewhat, and the winds have strengthened. So this is still a very dangerous storm as it makes landfall here on the southwestern Florida coast.
Weather Channel 2 has her two hurricane hunters, Nicole Mitchell and Warren Madden. We're going to take you now to Naples, Florida.
Yeah, and that's where Mike Bettis is standing by. Mike, what is the latest situation here?
Well, we still have the wind, we still have the rain. It really hasn't stopped raining at all here. It's been relentless for the past several hours. I want to update you on the conditions here in Collier County and Naples. For that, we bring in Fred Collier from the Collier County Commission, and Fred Collier, and I want to talk about the latest here and how many people we have in shelters, and have you had any emergencies you've had to respond to?
Well, we have a little over 8,000 people in the shelters. The shelters have been working fine all night long. We had a brief interruption of water supply to one of the shelters, but it was restored very quickly. We've had no significant emergencies during the evening. We did have a woman who went into labor, and we had to get her to the hospital. But the people with special needs have been apparently well taken care of. We have not run into any problems at all. We do have widespread power outages, however, as you would expect with wind like this. And a couple of our cell towers are not operational. We're not sure if the cell towers are down or if they've just had an electrical malfunction or the generators have run out of fuel. But we are going to try to get out to those as soon as it's daylight and we can really take a look at them.
Fred, you've also mentioned that you've had a little bit of minor flooding here in the Naples area.
Yes, we have. As a matter of fact, the Naples Marco area northward in the county has been rather fortunate. The storm surges did not materialize that were forecast, fortunately. And the streets have some water on them, maybe a foot and a half in some cases. But we believe most of that is rainwater. We can look at the tides, and the tides are not particularly high, so we're not getting the storm surge, thankfully. But we're very concerned about the people down in Everglades City and in the southern part of the county. We have not been able to get down there, and they were expected to bear the brunt of this storm.
Fred, the storm that everyone remembers in this area is 1960, Hurricane Donna. You went through that storm. How does Donna and Wilma, what's the comparison there?
Well, I was in the Florida Keys at the time Donna came through there and then came to Naples. And I would say that Donna was probably comparable in terms of wind. I don't recall as much rain from Donna. And the storm surge was substantially worse for Donna. I would guess we got maybe 9-10 feet of water here in Naples, 4 feet above essentially the base elevation here. So, but other than that, I find them fairly comparable.
Now, this morning, once we have sunlight come up, you say you're going to be out there, and people and crews will be out there assessing damage.
Yes, we're going to start into damage assessment as soon as it's safe for the crews to get out and start looking around. We have had a few people out in Marco. We actually have cameras set up in Marco to record events down there. Unfortunately, they stopped working earlier this morning. But the people who've been out and monitoring damage before daylight have reported surprisingly little structural damage. And so we're happy about that preliminary report, but it's still dark here. It's very difficult to see. And as soon as it gets daylight, I'm going to make a tour of as much of the coastal area as I can.
And maybe one of the things that has helped in minimizing some of the structural damage is that a lot of the buildup here is relatively recent, and so a lot of buildings are up to code.
Yeah, that's true. Most of the construction along the coast has been relatively recent, and it's built to a stronger, a more stringent code that is more hurricane resistant. And we think we can withstand the winds fairly well here in Naples. It's the storm surge that causes all of us a great deal of concern.
All right, Fred, thanks so much for the information this morning. Best of luck to you and your crews out there assessing the damage. Some of the worst conditions have been over the past couple of hours. We've had very strong winds. The highest wind gust we've seen reported about 72 miles an hour, but relentless rain. Very minor storm surge coming off the bay side that has caused some flooding, Heather and Marshall, but we're now going to start to see our winds shift, and they may at one point now start to turn out of the west. We may see some minor storm surge off the Gulf of Mexico, something we'll definitely watch here as we go through the morning hours. Back to you.
All right, you're watching Hurricane Central, uninterrupted coverage of Hurricane Wilma, commercial-free as well. We're going to head back to Naples right now.
And that is where Mike Bettis is standing by. And Mike, what are the conditions like right now?
Well, we're still dealing with some very heavy rain, and with the rain, we've had some flooding. I want to show you the parking lot behind me here, and you can see, you get on the other side of the divider there, it is flooded. And so we've got a good about 10 inches to a foot of water, standing water here in some of the parking lots. A lot of this has come in, a little bit of overspray off of Naples Bay, and also just some heavy rain that has fallen. But plenty of cars here in the parking lot. They may be at risk to be underwater, so we'll certainly watch for that. But we're now starting to see our winds shift just a little bit as the storm begins to pass by us, and that may cause some surge from the Gulf side, something that we'll definitely watch. An area not too far from here, Marco Island. We have some new pictures in this morning from that area. I want to show that to you. They're dealing with the same things that we're dealing with here in the Naples area, dealing with some very high winds, also dealing with plenty of rain there, so flooding. Also, a very pressing issue there, and I think that's going to be the trend here across much of southwest Florida through the morning hours. Now that the light has come up, it's a completely different story here this morning, that is for sure. And so there are multiple things to watch with this system. I even want to show you here where we are live now, some of the pictures here in the parking lot. A lot of debris here, a lot of trees that are coming down, stuff like this, palm fronds, a lot of coconuts that are flying around, and been watching this restaurant that is down the way, and I hope you can see that from where we are. We're actually kind of shooting right into the rain. Parts of the roof and the fencing around it are starting to tear up right now. And we talked to that restaurant manager yesterday. They were leaving yesterday. They brought in all their patio furniture to keep it all secure. It was all glass top tables, so they brought them all inside. But all the windows that face the bayside were not boarded up. All large glass windows there, so you can look out picturesque over the bay. They have not been covered up, and they may be blown in.
That was Mike Bettis reporting from Naples, Florida, getting a little bit of satellite problems there and a digital blackout. We're going to head to Miami Beach now.
And that is where Jeff Morrow is standing by. He'll take over. And Jeff, again, kind of fill us in on what's happening in this region.
All right, it's a wild morning, Heather and Marshall, just a completely wild morning. We're going to wipe off the lens there a little bit. I'm going to have my cameraman show you the power of the wind there behind me. Again, look at the trees. I mean, I almost don't have to say anything, folks. I mean, it's a hurricane here. It's blowing hard. Right over behind those trees, you might be able to see some power poles. They're swaying in the wind as well. There was a transformer up on one of them there. It completely exploded here within the last 3 minutes. I've never seen one go that close. And when I say explode, I mean explode. It went to pieces, and green and yellow and blue flash and flames coming out of it. Again, it looks like we've lost power, at least over in that part. Again, just tremendous, tremendous, tremendous wind. We just fed some pictures down. Our cameraman Rodney went out and shot some stuff here, and I got to give my kudos to him. He's a brave man being out in all this. But as soon as we can get those pictures up around this area, we can. But even in our little area right here, and we're at Miami Beach, just the wind's howling. I mean, it is roaring. Fortunately, we're able to shelter ourselves a little bit, even though, as I mentioned earlier, pieces of the roof here of this building being renovated are coming apart and flying around. Again, whoa, I don't know if you saw that. A huge piece of debris just flew off the roof and went on by there. Again, oh, there it goes again, there it goes. It's just, oh, look at it, it's just flying all over the place. That's what we're dodging here, folks. I mean, it is just incredible. The wind gust, probably upwards of 100 miles an hour between some of these buildings. Rain coming down sideways. Again, just all this debris. Whoa, it's coming our way a little bit. Wow. Just take a look, folks. This is a hurricane. This is a Category 3, and we're not even into the worst of it yet. Bad. Really bad stuff. And again, if anybody is here right now, I mean, watching me, and I don't know if they can see cable here in the Miami area. If you can, don't go outside. In anywhere here in this part of the Gold Coast of South Florida, don't. There's another piece of debris flying down, whoa, down the roadway here. I don't know if you can hear that or not. Again, when I said shooting gallery last time, Heather, I meant it. I mean, it is dangerous. So I'll tell you what, I'll get back to you on this. But as soon as it becomes a little bit more safe, whoa, there goes, whoa, another whole bunch of stuff flying. Whoa, it's just filling the air here, folks. We'll get back to you as soon as we possibly can. Back to you guys. I'm going to head for a little bit of shelter here.
Good idea, Jeff. And again, you know, no surprise that we are getting some reports here that we have some winds up to 94 miles per hour, some of the gusts around the Miami area.
Yeah, 316,000 people without power in South Florida, too. That's what we've been writing down, trying to keep the facts and figures for you as we have uninterrupted coverage here at Hurricane Central. Now, Hurricane Wilma snapped large tree branches and sent them crashing onto a Key West street. Several cars narrowly missed direct hits. Just south of Duval Street, flooding was evident, and some debris can also be seen in the water. Hurricane Wilma moving across the southern part of Florida right now. Dr. Steve Lyons.
Miles per hour.
Now, you're watching Hurricane Central, uninterrupted coverage, commercial-free of Hurricane Wilma, and we have a report coming up next from Mike Bettis in Naples, Florida.
The outer bands of Wilma are hitting us right now and already starting to feel some early effects with the rain and the wind. Some of the trees are already being downed here in Naples. The effects from Wilma are going to be threefold here in southwest Florida. Watching for storm surge, also watching for flooding rain, and then wind damage. We'll have trees down, structural damage, and when you have high winds, you always watch for power outages. Most of the intersections right now without lights. The winds with Wilma right now are fierce. We are on Naples Bay, watching for the waves to crash up over the break wall on the sidewalk. This is an area on the parking lot that is very susceptible to storm surge right now.
Mike was talking earlier, too, to Fred Coyle, who is the Collier City Commissioner.